Today, when you think of Christians and prophecy, you probably think of this.
The rapture trumpet sounds on October 6 to 7.
Wacky, Pentecostal, fake. Even more reason to distrust this religion. But what if I told you that the prophets in the Bible are so much more than what we see today? And in this episode of How Frieren is a Christian Anime, we're going to take a look at how this prophet, John the Baptist, is paralleled to the hero of the South in the anime Sousou no Frieren. According to Deuteronomy, people can tell if a prophet is a true prophet when they can tell us with 100% accuracy that something will happen in the future. How can we know when a message has not been spoken by the Lord? If what a prophet proclaims in the name of the Lord does not take place or come true, that is a message that the Lord has not spoken. Though more importantly, if a prophet says, "Let us follow other gods and let us worship them," then not only are the Israelites commanded not to listen to this prophet, but that prophet must also die. Now today, the main way that God speaks is through his word, which we find in the Bible, the written word of God. But this is only a luxury that we get to enjoy in the present day. Back in the Old Testament, the prophets are the main way that people get access to what is called divine revelation, the express will of God, what God wanted to say to his people. So the primary purpose of prophecy isn't actually to be able to tell the future, and it's not a skill for the prophet to enrich themselves or use for their own selfish gain. The prophet is God's mouthpiece for God to be able to communicate truth. But for the people to be able to discern if someone is speaking from God, the best way to find out if a prophecy comes from God is then to see if the prophet gives an account of a future event which may happen and if that event eventually comes to pass. Because if the source of this knowledge and this truth comes from God, then it has to come from this perfect, all-knowing, powerful being. And if you predict something that doesn't happen, then it's pretty obvious you're not getting that information from an omniscient source. In episode 2 of Frieren season 2, we are introduced to a kind of prophet, a hero, well, one of the many heroes before Himmel who tried to defeat the Demon King. The hero of the South was said to be humanity's strongest, and he earned that title by annihilating all of the Demon King's frontline troops and disrupting his supply route at the northernmost end of the Northern Plateau within the year. And it was at this location that the hero of the South fought the combined forces of the 7 Sages of Destruction, the demons who pose the greatest threat to humanity, especially Schlacht the Omniscient, the Demon King's confidant who could see 1,000 years into the future using magic. He was one of the demons who posed such a barrier to the humanity which was trying to break free from the oppressions of the demons. The hero of the South was then not only able to defeat 3 of the 7 sages, he also defeated Schlacht the Omniscient, which freed many of the people living in the Northern Plateau, and hence why we see a statue of this guy here in this village instead of Himmel. However, this freedom came at a cost. By freeing the people of the North from the reign of demons, Schlacht the Omniscient and the hero of the South killed each other in battle. So you might be asking me, where does John the Baptist fit into all of this? Well, after Frieren explains to Fernan Stark why this guy was significant, we get a flashback to when the hero of the South actually visited Frieren and tried to convince her to come and travel in order to defeat the Demon King. In the flashback, Frieren refuses, and the hero of the South seems unsurprised. It's as if he knew Frieren wasn't going to accept his invitation. The guy then reveals the secret to his supposedly incredible strength, and he explains that he has the ability to see into the future using magic. That's why I say he's a kind of prophet, because he has access to a kind of divine revelation. Revelation that is able to provide the truth about future events. And I think he shares that trait with the Old Testament prophets, where those prophets have this special relationship with the God who is the truth who is all-powerful, all-knowing, perfectly wise. That knowledge of the future gives the hero of the South a unique relationship with truth itself. I'll go into a bit more detail later in the video in the other ways he parallels the role of a prophet, but the clearest similarity between the hero of the South and John the Baptist is in both of their roles compared to who are the main characters of their respective stories. In the Bible, Jesus is the main character of that text, and John understands that he has a job to do before the official start of Jesus' ministry. He is the forerunner. He precedes Jesus. In Sousou no Frieren, Himmel is the main character, and the hero of the South says this to Frieren before he leaves to go north. He says, referring to this young man who will eventually come in the future, he says, "I hate to admit it, but he is the one who will save the world, not me. You will travel with that young man's party and defeat the Demon King." And he says that Frieren should pass on the following message. "Tell that young man this, I swear I will clear a path for you." Something mentioned in all four Gospels about John the Baptist is that he fulfills this prophecy from the book of Isaiah, that there is going to be this figure who comes before the Messiah comes to save the world. There is going to be the preceding figure who will prepare the way for him. We don't have time to go into the parallels between Jesus, who is the Messiah, the chosen one to save humanity from their sins, and Himmel, who also seems to be a picture or type of Christ, who is seemingly, according to the prophecy of the hero of the South, going to save humanity from the reign of the demons. That's a story for another video, but John the Baptist states as clear as possible in John 1:23 that I am a voice of one calling in the wilderness, make straight the way for the Lord. In the same way that the hero of the South prepares the way for Himmel and his party by severely maiming the Demon King and his armies, knowing full well that as much as he'd like to fulfill the role of saving humanity from the evils of the demons, that's not his job. He's just there to create a path for the next guy to come and do the greater work. He shares that humility with John the Baptist, who fully understands his role as the forerunner, second to the person who God has chosen to save the world. Another purpose for prophecy I haven't mentioned yet is for God to increase faith among his people. That's why at first glance, the hero of the South doesn't fully encompass the role of an Old Testament prophet like John the Baptist does. He only has the seeing the future ability, which we've already established isn't actually the main role of a prophet that we read in the Bible. But when he communicates truth to Frieren, and that truth is then told to Himmel, it's meant to increase both Frieren and Himmel's faith that they and their party are going to be the ones who defeat the Demon King. In the flashback, Frieren says that she can't see herself doing any of that. But it's in the same kind of line of thinking when Luke writes at the start of his gospel that he writes this account so that the Christians in the early church would have a certainty of the things that they have been taught. Prophecy, messages, and truth communicated by God also includes that encouragement and increase of faith. Now, I do think this is where the parallel between the hero of the South and John the Baptist breaks down a bit, because in the anime, the active agents in the story aren't God, but are the human characters in the real world. It's a crucial reminder for us all that even we aren't the main characters of our own lives and stories. It's actually Jesus who is the main character, but the parallel remains that John's role to the people was to exhort and increase their faith in God. The hero of the South's role is to both clear a way for Himmel, but in doing that, he not only increases Himmel's faith, he also increases the faith of the people who live in the northern plateau, that they are going to be free from the rule of the demons. Though it's here I'd like to pause for a second and establish this to you, dear viewer, because I'm going to release a video later this year developing and really explaining how every anime is a Christian anime, so make sure you're subscribed so that you can actually see the theoretical foundations for that. I am not at all saying that the author of Sousou no Frieren, Kanehito Yamada, intentionally took inspiration from the Bible, from the person of John the Baptist, and used that as her starting point to base the character of the hero of the South. The point of Christian anime as an offshoot of existing Christian literary theory is that we're trying to catch the glimpses of God we see an anime, because an anime has been written and animated by people who have been made in the image of God. It should follow then that we see those imprints of God in the shows and movies that they make. In the same way, a feminist might look at this exact same scene and make a critical analysis focusing on the power dynamics between male and female, and how seemingly Frieren here is the passive character who is not advancing the plot, but it's the male characters who are pushing Frieren forward to defeat the Demon King. I wouldn't say that the feminist is incorrect. It makes perfect sense that if you subscribe to that worldview, you will view the world through that power struggle between male and female as a natural conclusion and continuation of feminist ideology. In the same way, the Christian anime literary theorist, which I am challenging you as Christians to become, is that we will view this scene and not jump straight away into a Marxist or feminist or postmodern interpretation, but we would interpret this knowing that our Christian worldview is the truth which reads and watches this anime from that lens. I'm not at all saying that Christianity is explicitly influencing this anime. I am saying because the author and the animators are made in the Imago Dei, that they will reflect those values of God because they are indeed his image bearers. And it's in this character of the hero of the South that we see, while it's not a complete parallel to John the Baptist, there are these glimpses of what God willed and planned for John the Baptist, which are then also paralleled in this episode of Frieren. The hero of the South goes north, even when he knows that he is going to die, but it's that heart of humility that we celebrate in this anime, that is celebrated in this anime, that we also see in the real world. There are many Christians around the world who are still today persecuted for their faith, yet they are still humble and still obey what Christ has commanded, even if it risks their life. They still choose to do the right thing. Himmel the hero would eventually defeat the Demon King, yet while the Demon King is dead, there are still monsters and demons prowling about. This could perhaps be interpreted as an analogy for the role of sin that still prowls about. Because Jesus has already been crucified, he's paid the price to suffer and die for our sins, yet the Christian may believe and share in that sacrifice by receiving the forgiveness of sins. We still live in a broken and fallen world, and like the demons of Frieren, the effects of sin still affect us today. So that will be the next video in this series of how Frieren is a Christian anime, exploring the ways that Himmel can be interpreted as a type of Christ. That video will be recommended here, but for now I hope this video interests you instead.